Hey guys, Adam from Blue Line here. Thanks for joining us again for another episode of our tying tips. So, one of the tips we used to get a ton of questions about is thread. So, I've got a really great kind of hack or tip for you guys today involving the thread that you're going to see a lot in our videos. So, follow along, stay tuned, I'm going to help you guys out. We made a full video on this a little while back, but I wanted to go even more in detail and get it up on the YouTube channel. So you walk in a fly shop and you see just rows and rows of different colors of thread, different sizes of thread. It's extremely overwhelming, especially if you're a beginner. Even though those things aren't super expensive, I mean, like, dang, they add up if you try to buy all the cool colors and all the sizes that you want. So I've got a really awesome tip for you today that'll keep you from doing that. So the thread that we like that you're going to see used in pretty much all of our videos is this Vivus G thread. They make this in a few different sizes, and I actually think they made a few sizes recently that I haven't even heard of yet. But we've got 100 denier, 200 denier. They make a few different sizes just depending upon what you're doing. The smaller the number D, the smaller the thread is. So that's pretty easy to remember. So like a 50 is their kind of the smallest one that I generally use. That's great for trout stuff. The 200 is about the biggest, and that's great for some saltwater, big bass flies and big trout flies. So they make this in both white and black. If I was you, I would go out and buy a couple spools of white, one in 100, one in 200, or if you do a lot of trout stuff, maybe one in 50 and one in like 150. Then buy black in the same. So these are the maybe only 4 thread spools is all you actually need to tie flies. So one of the things that we run off of is on a dark fly, I'm going to use the black thread. Whether it's kind of a gray, a brown, olive, black, whatever. If it's a darker colored fly, I'm going to use black thread. Obviously, on light colored flies, I'm gonna use light thread. If it's a tan or a maybe even a gray or a like a lighter gray, like a shad color, or maybe like a white fly, I'm gonna use white. But let me show you how you can get a bazillion different colors with only having a handful of Sharpies. So instead of going out and buying a thread spool of every single thread color, just buy white thread and a handful of Sharpies. So that's what this is going to look like. So I've already got some of my thread loaded up here. We've got some just white Vivus 200. So hopefully it was going to be able to get you guys to see this. So I've already colored some of the thread in just a couple little stretches. So this top one, we've got a brown, which is awesome if you're going to do like a nymph or a little collar, something like that. Next we have a pink. Really cool for saltwater stuff, shrimp, crab patterns. Next we have a chartreuse, cool for bass, a couple different bass patterns, something like that. Also great for indicating just a color to yourself as a collar. I'll talk about that a little more in a minute. And then we have a red, really great, a dark red, really great for just finishing off a nymph. Again, one of my favorite for color coding nymphs. So I've already got those colored on here. I was just going to show you kind of what that looks like as we wrap this forward. We can see that brown is pretty dang cool, how this white thread really takes that Sharpie color well. Definitely doesn't bleed out. So that brown looks really cool for finishing off like a nymph, pheasant tail, prince nymph, anything like that. I use that brown sometimes for that. This pink is pretty cool. Again, I like it a lot for a crab, like a shrimp pattern, something like that. The chartreuse is pretty cool to finish off a bait fish, a bass fly. That chartreuse holds really well, definitely gives the fly a bright spot. You also see quite a few crab patterns or shrimp that'll have like a green bright spot in them. So that's a great way to do that. Last, I have a dark red. Again, really popular for dark nymphs. A really cool one to put on for just a pheasant tail or finishing off like a hare's ear. That red spot can be pretty cool to do that with. So to show you guys how we kind of do that, here I've got a olive Sharpie. That's just kind of that standard green color. This is the one I use for darker flies. So you wouldn't want to color on the actual spool itself. Just color the thread as you get it pulled out. So we're just going to go in here and kind of color both sides. Just run, you know, up and down once or twice. There we go. So now I just colored that thread olive, and say we were gonna finish off and tie this off. So we just go ahead and start wrapping a couple times, get that olive wrap. We take our whip finish tool here, and we can even whip finish with this olive color. So I'm just gonna wrap that forward. There we have it. So guys, each one of these thread spools of this Vivus GSP is about $3.50. And I just bought all of these Sharpies for roughly $2.75 to $3 a piece. So you can get a lot more use than just buying a thread spool of say pink. I don't know how often you would really use that. On top of that, you rarely see the thread color, as the majority of the fly, it's probably going to be covered with a lot of your materials, and you may only see it at the very end of the fly. So that's where the Sharpies come in handy. It'll definitely save you some money. It's a great way for beginners to be able to have every thread color the Sharpie sells, and then just color that white thread. Like I said, I mostly, for my dark flies, I just use black. That tends to work for me. But if you were going to see the thread and you wanted to color it, that's where even going to a white thread and then coloring it, say olive or brown, is a good choice. So one thing I mentioned a minute ago was kind of color coding your flies. That's something pretty popular that you can do very easily with these Sharpies. So if you're going to finish off a fly, you could say color code it with just a quick wrap of, say, chartreuse, or maybe this pink or a light red, something that really doesn't show up very well in the fly, but that you could decipher and say, oh, okay, I've labeled this one as green or red. Point of that being, you could tie the same pattern, say this is really helpful for nymphs or maybe even saltwater patterns, but you label it with green or red for different weights that you tied in. So maybe you don't need your flies to sink a ton. You might tie those with, say, green. And those would be just a small bead with no lead wrap, no nothing in them, and maybe not even tungsten. Maybe that's like a brass bead. Then you go down to the next level. You could get like a red wrap, and that's okay. I switched to a tungsten bead on the red ones. Those I know are going to be pretty heavy. They're going to help me get down. And then maybe the very last one, you have a pink wrap. And those to you might mean I used a tungsten bead and I lead wrapped it or wire wrapped it. So it's extremely heavy. These are headed straight to the bottom. So that's another technique that I've seen for people using some of the lighter colors to be able to do just a really, maybe even one or two wraps at the collar of a nymph to say to yourself, okay, this is a light one, this is a heavy one, this is a super heavy one. So another quick tip and another good use for these Sharpies. So the last thing I'll give you is make sure that when you are coloring that thread, color it on the thread itself above the bobbin. Don't try to color it on the fly. It doesn't work very well. It's gonna bleed. It doesn't work great. Trust me on that one. But I hope this tip helps you out. I hope it saves you some money. Hopefully simplifies that huge run of thread that they have at these fly shops, these huge displays with every color. You really don't need it. Just go buy you a pack of Sharpies. Most craft stores will have a whole Sharpie section that you can go in and pick a ton of different Sharpie colors from. Or hop on Amazon and buy like a starter pack of Sharpies. It's a heck of a lot cheaper than heading over and buying every spool of thread. I like this GSP stuff. If you have a different thread, every thread that I've tried these with works, whether it's Danville or Uni, whatever. Just to give it a shot with some thread that you've already got. I just personally like this stuff, but if you already have some threads, give it a shot, or if there's another thread that you like better, I'm sure it'll work. It's not just for this Vivus stuff. Anyways, thanks so much, guys. Really appreciate your help and support. If you've liked this video, if this was helpful to you, please click like. That helps us bring more of these to you. Also, if you like our channel, please click subscribe. That really helps us out, keeps us making these videos. Thanks so much, guys. We'll see you on the water.